Okay, we're going to see how the if statement works with a condition in Excel. This is somewhat of a review as you have had this before, but it is a different application. Let's take a look at this particular one. They get the first 100 miles free. So looking at this person in row 7, they drove 285 miles. So how many miles do they have to pay for? 185. How about the last person in row 15? They drove 75 miles. How many miles do they have to pay for? This is always interesting. I find out that students don't understand the statement. They'll say, oh, they have to pay for 75 miles. Or if we had it 99 miles, oh, they have to pay for 99. So if they drove 100, then they wouldn't have to drive, they wouldn't get charged for any. Some students want to avoid having an if statement altogether and will simply subtract 100. If that's the case, down there in row 15, you end up with a negative 25, and we end up paying the person. So the only correct way to do this is to use an if statement. There are several different ways you could do this. In fact, there are 4 that I know of. You could ask, does E7, is it greater than 100? That's one condition you could have. Or you could ask if it's greater than or equal to 100. Both of those would work. Conversely, you could look at it the opposite direction. Is it less than 100? Or is it less than or equal to 100? How do you know which one to do? The idea is to use the one that most closely reflects the way it was described. Now, if the person said they get the first 100 miles free, I'd be inclined to go with the last 2 and say if they drove less than 100 or less than or equal to 100, then they pay for 0 miles. On the other hand, if it's worded anything, they get charged for things over the first 100, then the first 2 would be the best match for that. In reality, this is such a trivial example, it really doesn't matter, but I just wanted to give you an idea how you might decide. Let's take a look at flowcharting these 4 conditions. And did a little bit of a variation here. The input would be E7. We ask the condition if it's greater than 100. Then what we want to put into I7 is E7 minus 100. Instead of putting I7 in the flowchart, which could easily be confused to be 17, and I've done it myself, I used the word adjusted miles. But think of those with the flowchart, it would be just a I7. However, so our person who had 285, we would subtract 100 from that, and they would end up with 185. Our person who had 75, we'd go on the false side, and they would end up with a 0. Using another possibility, E7 greater than or equal to 100, if it were exactly 100, we would take 100 minus 100 on the true side and end up with 0 in adjusted miles. Perfectly okay. On the other hand, if we said the adjusted miles, the first 100 are free. If you took that approach, then we say, okay, if it's less than 100, they get 0. That's reflecting that statement. The first 100 are 0. Similarly, we could say less than or equal and come up with 0. In the previous one, when we just said less than, we would take 100 minus 100 and come up with a 0. Now, if I were to make a little program that figured this out, the only difference would be that I would not have E7, I would have a variable name. I would input the miles. I'd ask the question, are they greater than 100? If so, subtract 100. If not, make the adjusted miles 0. This time I have two memory variables involved. Boringly the same. If it's greater than or equal to 100, it works also. If it happens to be less than 100, then the new variable adjusted miles would have a 0 in it, whereas the new variable would have 100 subtracted from the original one. Same if I put less than or equal to 100. Okay, at this point we're going to go back to the Excel and actually code in the statement and see how it turns out. So, equal if, and personally I like the E7 greater than 100. And I guess that's because the complex formula comes first and I would rather see it on the right-hand side. But it's not wrong. None of the other three are wrong. Okay, if E7 is greater than 100, then I want to put the results of E7 minus 100 in this cell. Otherwise, I want to put in a 0. And now I should be able to copy it down, and I'll see a 0 in the last one. And so it worked. Come back for the next session and we will turn this if selection for adjusted miles into programming code, or at least pseudocode.